Acer announced two variations of their handheld called the Nitro Blaze 8 and Nitro Blaze 11. And this is based on, them being an 8-inch screen and an 11-inch screen. And I'll tell you, an 11-inch screen for a handheld is absolutely ridiculous. Like, you might as well just get like a GPD Win Max, which is like a mini laptop at this point, if you're going to get an 11-inch screen. So it's kind of wild that they're making, such one with such a big screen when I think in terms of specs, it's not really going to deliver. Like, you have a last gen CPU that is, a little outdated compared to the competition that's going to be coming out. You have only 16 gigabytes of RAM, which, if anything, the ROG Ally X has proved we definitely need more than 16 gigabytes of RAM, even in PC handhelds. So, like, 24 is like the absolute minimum at this point. And it seems like, let me see the battery, because I believe the battery wasn't that great either. Yeah, it's a 55-watt battery, and the battery doesn't increase from the 8-inch to the 11-inch. So this is definitely a weird one. I think they're just kind of leaning into the fact that they have a handheld that has an 11-inch screen, but I don't think this one is going to do that well overall. Next up, well, here's the hand size comparison to the Nitro Blaze 11. Holy crap. I have big hands, and my hands probably don't look that much larger compared to this person's right here. All right, next up, we have Zotac with their Zotac Zone 2. The Zotac Zone 1 actually came out a few months ago, or at least a few weeks ago. It hasn't really shown its way to the United States just yet. I believe it's just Europe for now. And what the Zotac Zone had between the OLED screen, the dual track pads, and a few other features, it seemed really cool. And it's a shame that it was, underpowered upon arrival, the original, which is behind this big guy right here, that it was a little bit behind in terms of tech, but like it had some features, like it even had a webcam, which I find to be particularly interesting. Like, imagine doing like an IRL stream on this thing. And just having your face in that camera. That'd definitely be something very interesting if someone would ever try that. I'd actually give it a watch. But we have the specs down here. We have 32 gigabytes of memory. That's good. Again, the AMOLED multi-touch display, 1080p, 120 hertz. At this screen size, you don't need anything above 1080p, and we'll get that into that later with Lenovo, because there's a bit of a debate around that, especially in comparison to the first Lenovo Legion Go. But 48.5 watt hour battery, still a little bit more than the Steam Deck, but not by that much. Yeah. Big question is when the first one is going to ever hit the US, and if it ever does, and hopefully this one hits in time to, make some waves in the handheld space, because right now in the States, it's mostly ROG, Ally, and Lenovo Legion Go. Speaking of the Lenovo Legion Go, this week was huge for the Legion Go, as well as SteamOS as well, because the Legion Go S, particularly the blackish purple model here, is going to be the first out-of-the-box SteamOS experience. And if you don't know what SteamOS is, it's Valve's operating system for the Steam Deck. So right here, I have the Steam Deck. This has its own operating system that is based off of Linux. So you never really have to touch the desktop at all on this thing. And it makes it more of an appealing experience to a more casual PC gamer, especially if you're not playing the latest and greatest and playing a lot of classic indie games and all other types of games that aren't that demanding. You would probably play it on something like this. And it can still play the most powerful, like the most demanding games. Like, I played so much of Elden Ring on here last year. It's insane. But in terms of the new Lenovo Legions, the Legions of Legion Goes, you have the Windows version, which is in white, that will be coming out later this January or early February, and then the SteamOS version will come out in May. There is a bit of an asterisk for that because there are two processor options for the Legion Go S. There is the newly announced from AMD, the Ryzen Z2 Go and the Z1 Extreme. And you'd think with Z2, it's more powerful than the Z1 Extreme. It is not. The Z2 Go is definitely useful in terms of battery optimization, that it's more meant for, power saving. And it'll probably be a bit more of a power saver and battery saver in the long run than the Z1 Extreme. But the Z1 Extreme is still the more powerful chip. In fact, I think even the Z2, which is the base chip, is about the same as the Z1 Extreme. So I would the thing I don't understand is why they would have the Z1 Extreme versions come out in May when people are going to want the Windows version. Some people will want the Windows version over the SteamOS version. They'll probably download something like Bazite or download SteamOS on their own time, but they want some of the, features of Windows because there's some games you can't play on Steam that have anti-cheat that Steam doesn't support, or, they're exclusive to different clients like the Epic Game Store. So that's definitely something to think about, but I don't get why they would hold off the more powerful CPU until May along with the SteamOS version when they could have had both at either launch. Let's be perfectly honest. But the big daddy here is the Lenovo Legion Go 2. And this is the one I'm definitely going to get unless the ROG Ally comes out, or ROG Ally 2 comes out and puts this thing to shame. I am definitely getting this one because it's got the new Z2 Extreme processor, which is ridiculously powerful. It has the RDNA 3.5 graphics, 32 gigabytes of RAM, a 16 by 10, 144 hertz OLED with VRR. This has been the big debating point with handheld PC gamers in the past few months of what is the best type of display? Do you want OLED for those nice colors and the HDR? Do you want high refresh rate? Do you want 16 by 10, 16 by 9? Or do you want refresh rate on an IPS? Because there were some issues with OLED and variable refresh rate working together. Apparently there were some issues, but it seems like, at least as far as Lenovo is concerned, they're putting OLED and VRR on one display, which I think is fantastic. It's definitely going to be the best of both worlds in that case. And if there are still issues with variable refresh rate on OLED, you can always turn it off, which it's nice to have the option. But the Lenovo Legion Go 2 is definitely at the top of my list in terms of, anticipated handhelds. And yeah, I am very excited for this one. I think the big thing is that there is going to be a downgrade in resolution from the Legion Go 1. The Legion Go 1 had a 1600p display. This one's only going to have 1200p, which I think is a worthy sacrifice to not only bring down the price, but, having an OLED with VRR and on a screen this big that's only about 8.5 inches, 8.8 inches, 1600p and 1200p don't have much of a difference, and it's kind of a waste on a screen that size. So I think this is probably going to be the one to beat, and hopefully Asus brings their A game with the ROG Ally 2, because they were mysteriously absent in terms of handhelds this year. I know they came out with the ROG Ally X a little bit later last year, but it definitely felt like something was missing from this whole, menagerie of handhelds, where I could have easily seen the ROG Ally 2 and the Legion Go 2 butting heads. But I guess that is unfortunately something we did not see this past week.